Good afternoon. This is European Western Balkans interview from the European Parliament in Brussels. My name is Filip Lukic, and today we are talking to Bulgarian MP in the European Parliament, Andrej Kovačev, about Bulgarian experiences in the accession process, about possible Russian influence on the Serbian way to the EU, but also about the connections that EPP has with Serbian Progressive Party of the President Aleksandar Vučić. So, Mr. Kovačev, the first question goes in the direction that Serbia is opening only one chapter, and can we interpret it as a warning sign that the process of enlargement is slowing down a bit?
This is not only related to Serbia, but in general it's slowing down. We see that there was postponed the other expected opening of negotiations with Republic of North Macedonia and Albania. And this is the general atmosphere here in Brussels and in some of the member states, especially Germany, Netherlands and France, that they are not so keen to fasten the enlargement process in general. So I think finally it's good that at least one chapter was additionally open and that the negotiations was not stuck, and that we should from both sides show progress and not disappoint the citizens of Serbia on the way to the European Union. This is for us very important, especially for Bulgaria, because we think this is geostrategically very important Serbia to become as soon as possible a member of the European Union.
But do you think that just one chapter is enough to encourage public in Serbia, for example? Because also previous years we had very few chapters open every year. It's only 16, or with this one 17, and for example Montenegro opened all chapters.
Yeah, we can always discuss if the glass is half full or not, and for sure it's better to open more chapters, but this is the reality at the moment. And we need to work within the European Union, in the member states' capitals, to convince the governments, but also parliaments, that this is in mutual interest to open more chapters. But for sure, also the other topics what we are going to discuss are very important. The achievement in Serbia, the good signals coming from Serbia. It's very important that the positive signals are going to Berlin, to Den Haag, to Paris.
Are they going? We have decrease in media freedom. We are stuck in negotiations with Kosovo. A strong political pressure on judiciary system.
This is what I say. There should be positive messages if the Serbian people, and I think the big majority of the Serbian people, are in favor of the accession of Serbia to the European Union. So they should be reflected also in the behavior of the political class, of the judiciary system, and that they deliver positive signals to the capital of the member states. Without this, if it's continuing with some negative media coverage and I don't know, limits of the freedom of expression or some other negative moments, then there will be even less and less enthusiasm in the member states to continue with the accession process. But from our side, as from coming from Bulgaria, we put as priority the accession of the Western Balkan countries during the Bulgarian presidency. We think this should be on a very, very high level on the radar screen the European Union, and is geostrategically, I will repeat this, very important for all of us, for the European Union and for the countries of the Western Balkan, that the motivation is not slowing down. The motivation of the political class in each of the Western Balkan member states, countries, is not slowing down, but in opposite is more pushing for reforms and for positive signals. And this is why we need also parallel to the accession talks to do the other investment in infrastructure, in digital, in opening programs for young people, exchange programs, opening Erasmus Plus more for people from young people from Serbia.
You mentioned that Bulgaria put enlargement process on the very top of the agenda of the EU when it has the presidency of the EU. But today we have the situation that Kosovo didn't get visa-free regime, that North Macedonia and Albania didn't open negotiations. Where is the outcome of the putting Western Balkans on the top of the agenda?
And I can even include to this that Bulgaria and Romania are still not member in the Schengen area. This is what I told you before. In some Western member states, like Netherlands, France, and Germany, we need to work much more with, on one side, the public opinion, the media, but from the political class and the member of the parliaments in these countries to prove that this is also in their interest. The opening of more chapters for Serbia, the opening the negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania, and from our side that these countries are delivering good results and not, what to say, dual approach with us, but also working with Russia on some topics, or if we talk about alignment with the foreign affairs policy related to Serbia.
Yes, we'll also come to that question, but do you think that Belgrade and the government in Serbia is doing enough to convince Western countries? Because in the progress report, it's pretty much clearly stated that no progress was made in crucial fields such as rule of law, media freedom, etc.
This is the most difficult political fields, and from our experience in Bulgaria, but also in Romania, we come into the European Union in 2007 with this deficit, and we started with the mechanism for monitoring of the judiciary system. And I think all post-communist countries had similar problems, especially on the Balkan, that need to change a generation, the mentality in the judiciary system, make them work or make the perception. Sometimes this is also a perception of the public about corruption, about rule of law, how the citizens of the country think the institutions of this country are working.
I think it's very interesting to mention that you are also part of the EPP group in the European Parliament. And when it comes to the public and public opinion on the European integration, for example, you have Commissioner Hahn standing next to the President Vučić at the press conference. President Vučić is accusing journalists of being foreign agents, etc., and not reacting. How do you think that public then perceive European Union as a whole?
I don't know exactly the case what you mentioned, but in general this is very high on our agenda, the media freedom and the possibility for free expression of opinion, but in the same time the disinformation campaigns, fake news, influence of third players into the affairs of the European Union or of the accession countries who are trying to distract the public opinion or to make the European Union image worse. And the case of Serbia is example of this, that still, as I am good informed, that many people in Serbia think that Russia is doing more for them than the European Union. And this is totally the opposite. European Union funds and support is by far much more than the Russian investment, if at all, or is it only in military cooperation or in intelligence?
And what would you say? Who is responsible for that?
But this is the Serbian media atmosphere or Landschaft, if you work this, and also maybe the European Union communication strategy. This is what we discuss in the Foreign Affairs Committee here, together with my colleague Dalit McAllister, who is also the head of the committee, but also rapporteur of Serbia, that we need to provide much more clear, direct information to the citizens of Serbia what the European Union is doing with the European Union funds for the citizens and for the benefits of Serbia.
But I will just make one remark that, for example, in the government of Serbia, you have parties that are really against the EU membership of Serbia. And they are coalition party of the government.
Yeah, that's always a difficult situation, and
I think it's just one side saying that media is just responsible for the negative picture of the EU. Not negative, but not that optimistic picture about being the member of the European Union.
And what is the alternative? These people who are, because in each country you have some, thanks to God, marginal parties, even in Bulgaria, who are against the European Union and clear on Kremlin path. What they are offering to the Serbian people or to the Bulgarian people, to what kind of Eurasian Union or what kind of better alternative? They don't offer nothing, and this is simply a very simplistic propaganda with misusing some facts from the history to make the European Union bad, worse, and not interesting for Serbia or for other country, and giving false information to the public. This is a big topic, disinformation campaign against the European Union. We voted here in this parliament a few reports, resolutions exactly on this topic, and unfortunately in Serbia this propaganda has, how to say, absorption capacity of this propaganda.
The propaganda in Serbia is done by the government. Because, for example, if you have every day at least 2 ministers who are saying that EU is bad because it is stealing Kosovo from us and interferes with our identity, then we cannot say that media is responsible for just reporting about what officials of the government are saying.
You say this, I didn't hear these words from, at least not translated here, that official representative of the government is saying this. This is absolute nonsense, because no European Union started the historical issue with Milosevic and with former Yugoslavia. And this is very unfair if somebody, even from opposition or from the governmental parties in the coalition, is doing such a propaganda. This is absolute false information and misleading the public opinion in Serbia.
You mentioned Mr. McAllister, and civil society in Serbia, for example, it's pretty clear that Mr. McAllister wasn't that direct when it comes to the critiques of the Serbian government, and some media is also reporting that it's because of the connections to the EPP here in the European Parliament. Do you think that it's anyhow influenced the attitude of Mr. McAllister?
No, we are objective as possible. We would like to support the Serbian people, first of all, not parties, the Serbian people, and Serbia as a country to become a member of the European Union, but this comes with some criteria. You see that we had clash, although the party and the leader was in the EPP, from Mr. Gruevski, for example, in the...
But it only came after several years, not at the beginning.
Sure, but...
because, for example, Mr. McAllister went during the election night to the headquarters of the Serbian Progressive Party to celebrate the election victory.
But for sure,
it's not objective, I would say.
We give, and this is, I don't think it's a worst behavior if you celebrate something with your sister party, so to say.
But as a EU official?
No, Mr. McAllister is the vice president of the EPP.
And also rapporteur for Serbia.
And he
in the European Parliament, right?
Yes, in the European Parliament. This is not we are a member of the European Parliament are not EU officials. We are not bureaucrats. We are politicians, and we belongs to the European People's Party. So this is very different to somebody if it's a bureaucrat coming from the European Commission.
But
and
how
going
can
to this
we
party.
then assume that, for example, a report will be objective? That comes from the person who celebrated the victory of one party.
A report in the European Parliament is not done by the rapporteur. He is giving only the draft, and then each party, the Socialists, the Liberals, EPP, the Conservative, the Greens, are providing the amendments to this report, and then is voted with majority in the European in the committee, where EPP has no majority. So these reports are objective, and this is checked by each party, and has a balance of positive things what has happened and a lot of negative. Also for Serbia, the critics in these reports are also reflected the reality on the ground. So Mr. McAllister, even if he is a reporter and is a chairman of the committee, he has no influence to change the wording if there is a majority in the committee where EPP has no majority. So this is why, and this is the good thing in the European Parliament, that you have 750 members and no one party has majority. So then you find a balance where it's what's happening in the reality. If there's a positive steps, you recognize the positive steps. If there are a lot of negative and problematical issues, like we just rule of law and media freedom and so on, then this is also reflected in the report. So we need to be very objective to the European Parliament, to this House, that we provide indeed resolutions what reflect the reality on the ground. Despite the rapporteur, if he go to celebration, if he don't go to celebration, this has nothing to do with the vote in the committee.
One of the critics also goes in the direction of Russian influence in Serbia, especially Chapter 31 that refers to the foreign policy and Serbian alignment to the EU foreign policy. Do you think that, because right now we are just talking about Kosovo issue, rule of law, but can that Russian influence become a huge obstacle in the further accession process for Serbia?
We should be very honest on this, not only for Serbia. This is a big problem for the whole European Union, for the accession countries, because this influence we defined here as propaganda or strategic communication of third countries against the European Union is a big problem. We have some instruments here like this Istratcom in the European External Action Service, a small group of people who are monitoring the influence of the Russian propaganda in the member states, but also in the accession countries. And this is very much a test how your immunity of the society in Serbia is developed, and if you can select the fake news from the reality, the misuse of historical facts for political achievements in the present days. I can tell you this is similar in my country as well. By going back to the 19th century or to the 20th century, making some reference and giving advice for the present or for the future. This do not lead to nothing good, nor for Bulgaria, nor for Serbia.
And for example, we have also Montenegro, who has alignment with the EU foreign policy, I think 100%, and Serbia that has less than 50%. And both countries are the candidate states. And if we come back to the beginning of the interview when we're talking about the dedication to the EU membership, what do you think? Which kind of message Serbia is sending to the EU by having that less alignment with the foreign policy of the club that country wants to join?
That should be very clear, and we provided this message to all stakeholders, political stakeholders in Serbia, that at the end of the day, if they are serious on the accession, they should ally with 100% with the foreign affairs policy of the European Union. I know this is difficult from all these reasons what you have, including the Kosovo issue, because Kosovo and Russia is somehow also related. But at the end of the day, Serbia needs to find a modus vivendi on this topic as well. I don't think that can be progress in or accession to the European Union without this modus vivendi with Kosovo.
And when do you expect it to Serbia to find it out?
I cannot predict. I don't know. This is very much also related to the Serbian society, how strong or how much braveness in the political class, but also if the Serbian society will allow to the politics to take this decision of finding a mutual acceptable modus vivendi between Belgrade and Pristina. And this is something what you as young people and your media and the civil society of Serbia is to be active and to promote a pro-European agenda, including also between young people from Serbia and from Kosovo, that you are not anymore enemy. You should find a way, how the same way which Germany and France find after the Second World War, where enemies from centuries now become partners, and the borders are only symbolic. This is the great idea of Schuman and Monet, that we overcome what divided us, the victims, the big wars from the past, with the European integration. There is no other civilized way. The other way is proved. There is killing, there are a lot of suffering from both sides, and I don't like never that on our continent and on our Balkan peninsula again we start to shut with to each other and solve our problems by weapons and by war. So please find a civilized solution and make this border symbolic and cooperate between each other, and don't think about weapons, don't think about that somebody will come with military base on your territory and protect you from this and that. Make it civilized, like in Strasbourg, like between Netherlands and Germany, between countries in the Western Europe, where you drive your car and you don't find the border only by the language. Maybe you find out that you're in another country.
I think this is a good message to end the interview. Mr. Kovačev, thank you for participating.
Thank you very much. Thank you.